Do you personally trust Sharia law?
Once again, it depends on how we define it. I mean, if you've got ISIS, their understanding of Sharia, no, heck no, I do not trust
Do you
ISIS.
personally trust any form of Sharia law?
Yes.
You do.
My colleagues.
Should we allow these people in our country and they'll be allowed to not obey the law of this land and bring in Sharia law? Should we allow that in America?
My understanding is that is a false equivalency. One of the things that some
Should
of my...
we allow it, though, in America?
If that is the case, if a person is saying Sharia supplants or supersedes the Constitution, no, but that's not what I understand
Because
them
of
to say.
time and I'm black and slow, should we allow Sharia law in America?
My understanding of Sharia, yes. And what has been shared with me is that it works well with the Constitution.
So we should allow in America.
Yeah. If it does not supersede the Constitution, then we should allow it.
And so you founded this institution for religious tolerance, peace and justice. So are you teaching people to be more tolerant of all religion or all people? How is that working?
Right. And we call it the Institute for short, because I know it's a mouthful.
Right.
So
Institute of Religion.
For Religious Tolerance, Peace and Justice.
Institute for Religious Tolerance.
Tolerance, yeah.
So are you teaching people to be tolerant?
We teach people to be tolerant as much as possible with certain guidelines, because I wouldn't want to be tolerant of a Hitler or Nazi ideology. I don't think that is appropriate to allow people to walk all over other people,
right.
to commit genocide, things like that. So tolerance certainly has its limits, but tolerance in terms of appreciating the shared humanity of all people, that we all bleed the same way, we have hopes and dreams, we have fears, I believe we come from the same God. So if we can be tolerant of certain, if we can be tolerant of slight differences in belief, divergences, variations of belief, so that we can better understand each other and come to some type of common ground. Put down the swords and the guns, proverbially speaking, for a moment, and work on finding that common ground. What allows us to sit on the same stage together or at the same table together. And so that's what we're teaching people.
And so, I'm sorry,
Sure.
You believe there is good and evil?
I believe there is good and evil. Of course,
okay.
we'd have to define those, but I believe good and evil exist.
Right.
In people.
Right.
I might have good and evil intentions or impulses within me. You might as well. I mean, I even think of somebody like a Hitler. Of course, that's always the metaphor. What's the worst person you could think of? A Hitler, As a child, was he evil? I don't think he was evil. I mean, some of the things that I've read about him as a child, being severely beaten by his father, turning him into the guy who murdered upwards of 10 or 20 million people over the course of a decade, a variety of different ethnicities. What made him that way, I don't know, but I think he may have had good within him at some point in time. I think that if he is a creation of God, then he therefore had to have good within him.
You heard of Black Lives Matter?
Yes, sir, yeah.
They go around chanting no justice, no peace. They are, and I'm sure you agree with this being a Christian and a Jew, that they are far left, evil, radical organization, a bunch of fat, black, radical lesbian, right? Who hate God, who hate the country, who hate the Constitution, who hate nuclear families. They don't like marriage between a man and a woman. They hate the unborn children. Should we tolerate them?
Okay, so first, I don't know if I can agree with you with your assessment of members of Black Lives Matter in total.
The founders are fat, black, radical lesbian who admit to being Marxist.
Okay, yeah, I don't know her personally.
So should we tolerate them?
Right. So I have friends and colleagues who are part of Black Lives Matter. I'm thinking of one woman right now off the top of my head.
Oh my God,
who,
you better run.
And she and I disagree on many things. But, I think she's a good human being with her heart in the right place. Maybe she has some ideas that I disagree with. And I think I would say the same thing regarding the overall movement of Black Lives Matter. And I know it's not an organization per se. They're
no,
somewhat,
it's an organization. They're lying again.
Well, my understanding is they're sort of decentralized.
No,
but even still, it's
them.
okay.
That's what
I
the
won't
devil
argue on that.
does. He deceives.
Sure.
So should we tolerate them?
think we're going to have to tolerate them to some degree in order to have conversations with them.
Why?
Who knows?
What do we want to talk to them about?
Well, I mean, in the same way that any evangelist will talk to people about the gospel, you're sitting down with them, you're talking with them about Jesus. So in the same way, I want to talk with them about
should we tolerate
common
them?
ground. We're in a democratic republic, and there's separation of church and state. We have First Amendment rights. I think we have to tolerate their existence as a nation, the same way as we tolerate the existence of the KKK and the neo-Nazis. I don't like them. I want to have conversations with them and change their minds, but we live in a democracy and we have to tolerate their existence, within the larger context of this constitutional republic, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Let
me ask you about the Muslim. Should the Christians and Jews tolerate the Muslims?
Right. This is something I feel very strongly about, and I've done a lot of research, and I do a lot of work with the Muslim community, and I do believe that the three Abrahamic faiths do need to tolerate each other and understand each other. I believe that we come from the same God. I believe that we believe in the same God. We worship the same God, albeit from a different theological perspective. And if we look at Muslims as if, and I know sometimes people say, oh, Muslims don't believe in the same God, then I think we would have to say the same thing about Jews as well, because Jews also reject the idea of a triune God in the same way that Muslims reject the idea of a triune God, the idea of a Trinity.
So should we tolerate them, the Muslims?
As a people, as a religion, yes, I think we need to tolerate Muslims in the same way that we tolerate any other religion.
But they see Christians and Jews as infidels, worthy of death. And their Bible, the Bible teaches you you can deceive the Christians and Jews. You can befriend them in order to destroy them. Whatever it takes, right? Should we tolerate them knowing that they might do that to us?
Yeah, I think a lot of those quotes or paraphrases are taken out of context from the Quran. The Quran was okay. we might disagree on that.
I'm black and I don't read that well because blacks don't know how to read.
I love you.
But that's not out of context.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, or they claim it was revealed. I'm not saying it was or not,
of course.
But they claim it was revealed over the course of time throughout his life, and that certain surahs or chapters of the Quran are meant to be understood within the context of that moment in his life or that moment of the Islamic community, and you cannot universalize it and say that it is meant for every situation. And so some of the things of, kill the unbelievers where you might find them, it is specifically
the Jews
meant,
and the infidels. Yeah. And any Muslim that don't believe in cutting off your head, take your neck off, right? Yeah. Should we tolerate that from them?
All the Muslims that I deal with are peaceful, God-fearing people.
Lord.
And I could introduce you to some of them.
Should we tolerate that, though?
We should tolerate people that believe in goodness, and the Muslims that I know don't believe in that type of violence or that type of brutality. And I'd love to introduce you to some of them. I want to invite you to come on some of the field trips I take my students on and meet some of the Muslims that I know and love and feel are brothers and sisters under the same God. I'd invite you to come and meet them.
How do you personally trust them, knowing that the moment they pop out of their mother's womb, they're taught that you are an infidel worthy of death and whatever it takes to deceive
that I am
you?
an infidel,
yeah, because you're Jewish and Christian, so you're in double trouble.
Yeah.
Do you personally trust them?
I don't believe the majority of them, at least the ones that I know, believe that. Are there Muslims in the world that believe that?
No,
some
Matthew,
conservative.
do you personally trust them?
The ones that I know, I personally trust, because I don't think they believe that.
Would you walk down the road at night without a weapon with them?
Yeah, in fact, one of them is a police officer. I won't name him, but he's a police officer. He's a Muslim. He's an amazing human being. I trust him. I trust him.
The Muslim religion is spreading in the UK. Should the UK allow that to happen?
Yes, I believe so.
Why?
In the same way that it allows Judaism to spread or any other form of
But
Christianity.
they're attacking white girls and white women and raping and robbing and killing them, and then they won't allow the police department into their neighborhoods because of that Sharia law.
Yeah.
Do you believe in Sharia law?
Yeah, my understanding is that is sort of misconception about what's going on there.
No, believe me, it's not. I know people from the UK.
Okay.
It's not a misconception.
There may be certain places where, you know, certain gangs or elements are more prominent in certain communities, but my understanding is that the concept of a Muslim no-go zone does not exist here in the United States or in Britain. I think that's false. And also we have to understand Sharia law. What do they mean by Sharia law? It's something that's kind of bandied about as if it were some kind of a book or a hard and fast set of rules that, oh, you can't eat pork, you can't have alcohol, you can't do this and that and so forth, otherwise we're going to cut off your hands. That's not really Sharia the way that
So
most
you
Muslims
trust
understand
Sharia law?
My understanding of it is that it is a sort of a general
Do you trust
overarching-
Sharia law?
I trust my contacts and my colleagues in their understanding of what
Do
Sharia
you
is.
trust Sharia law?
All right. It depends on how we define Sharia. For
Do
them,
you
it's
trust Sharia
biblical
law?
law.
Do you trust Sharia law?
I trust the general Muslim understanding of Sharia
Do
in the
you
same way that I
personally trust
Christian
Sharia law?
understanding of biblical law.
Do you personally trust Sharia law?
Once again, it depends on how we define it. You know, I mean, if you've got ISIS, their understanding of Sharia, no, heck no, I do not trust
Do you
ISIS. I don't-
personally trust any form of Sharia law?
Yes.
You do.
My colleagues,
Should we allow these people in our country and they'll be allowed to not obey the law of this land and bring in Sharia law? Should we allow that in America?
my understanding is that that is a false equivalency. One of the things that some
Should
of
we
my,
allow though in America?
if that is the case, if a person is saying Sharia supplants or supersedes the Constitution, no, but that's not what I understand
Because
them
of
to say.
time and I'm black and slow, should we allow Sharia law in America?
My understanding of Sharia, yes, and what has been shared with me is that it works well with the Constitution.
So we
It does
should
not-
allow in
Yeah.
America.
If it does not supersede the Constitution, then we should allow it.
Should the Jews allow it in Israel?
Should the Jews allow Sharia in Israel?
Right.
As a matter of fact, it was in Israel before the state of Israel was created.
Should the Jews allow Sharia law in Israel?
If we're talking about moderate and liberal conceptions of Sharia, yes. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, not Taliban's
Should
understanding
the
of it.
Jews allow Sharia law in Israel?
I will repeat. If we're talking about moderate understandings of Sharia, yes, it should be allowed.
So you're saying the Jews should allow moderate Sharia law in Israel?
Moderate interpretations of it, as opposed to ISIS's interpretation of it. So, for instance, should we allow Nazi understandings of biblical law or KKK white supremacist understandings of biblical law? Well, I don't want that.
Which is worse?
They're going to enslave you again, the KKK, if they had their way, you know?
Which is worse, Sharia law or the Nazi?
It depends on the time period.
Which is worse?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're talking about ISIS's
Which
conception of
is worse?
Sharia.
I don't know. Don't add
Yeah.
extra words.
Okay.
You confuse me.
Okay, my understanding of Sharia,
Which is worse, Sharia law or Nazi law?
Nazi law, in my opinion.
But do Nazi cut your head off because you disagree?
They put about 6 million of my cousins in gas chambers.
Do they cut your heads off if you
they-
disagree?
They burned us up in ovens.
No,
It took too long
You're
to
not
cut
answering the
your head
question
off.
about cut your head off.
It took them too long to cut your head off.
If you think any form of Sharia law is fine, why don't we see Muslim protesting and demonstrating in America and the UK and other places against Sharia law? Why are they don't demonstrate against it, cutting off all the heads or preventing women from having freedom or cutting off your hands if you steal? Nowhere in Israel or in America or in the UK where Muslims, the so-called preacher Muslims or whatever they are, nobody's demonstrating against all that.
They are.
If they don't have a problem with it, why are they out publicly denouncing it?